Hey there, Sun here. And this is my friend Stopdoor. He's never played a Final Fantasy game. Well, that's about to change. Like any good, long-running video game series, Final Fantasy starts out rather simple, especially compared to the rest of the games in the series. A world veiled in darkness, the wind stops, the sea is wild, and the earth begins to rot. These words began a quest for video game immortality. Originally released in 1987 in Japan on the family computer, Final Fantasy wouldn't hit our shores until 3 years later on the good old Nintendo Entertainment System. So without further ado, let's start this thing already. Despite being the first game in the series, Final Fantasy already rolls a good number on the dice by allowing character customization to a certain degree at least. You get 6 classes to choose from, but only 4 party members. Starting off, we have Fighter, a great character, in fact your main damage dealer, until a certain event in the story, at which point you're gonna wish you'd brought a black belt. Next up we have Thief, whose speed is unmatched. He's also really handy if you want to escape a really tough battle, as long as it's not a boss battle. Next, we have Black Belt, who can become your most powerful character on your party, if you plan him out correctly. The thing about Black Belt is that he's actually stronger if you don't equip him with a weapon. Just make sure to equip him with armor, or, well, he won't get much done. Next we have Red Mage, who is the jack of all stats but master of none. He learns some white magic and some black magic, but never quite learns enough to be a useful party member. Basically, he's a fighter with some magic spells. Next we have White Mage, who I cannot stress enough is an essential party member. You need a White Mage. With a White Mage, you have the healing spells, the undead damaging spells, status cures, and an ultimate spell that only white mages can use. Get a white mage. Last but certainly not least, we have Black Mage, yet another essential party member. Black Mage knows every single attack spell once you teach him them. Unlike the Red Mage, there's no limit to how many he can learn. He's got Ultima, Fire, Thunder, Blizzard, status ailment spells. He can warp you out of dungeons. I can't stress enough, he's so essential, he's so amazing. You need a Black Mage on your party. Personally, I prefer a party of Fighter, White Mage, Black Mage. But that's just me. You can set up your party however you want. And in fact, I encourage you to do so. You don't always have to play my playstyle. Once you have picked your party, as you have to go through each and every single character, you must begin the arduous task of naming each one of them. You only get 4 letters, because this is before the 6 character limit, but even still, you can make some pretty good names, just as long as they only use 4 characters. Alright, so now you finally named your party, we can get on with the game. And this is the overworld map. Just to the north is Corneria there, and this is your main menu screen. As you can see, you only start out with 400 gold, or gil, as it would later be known. We have no items right now, but this is where your your potions and your antidotes and your key items are later stored. Since this is the first game in the Final Fantasy series, there is no separate key items screen yet. So, and there wouldn't be one until Final Fantasy 4, I think, maybe 5. Or is it 3? I don't know, I'll check with that later. Anyway, that's it. That's just pretty much where everything is stored. I think even some weapons might be stored here. That might be a separate screen, though. Next up, we have the magic menu. And just for example, we'll go to stop here. And door. And as you can see, the fighter can't use any magic spells. But the white mage can, and so can the black mage. Once you finally teach them. The thing about magic in this game is that it was before the standard MP pool, so in this game, and only this game, I think, might carry over into 2 as well, but you have a certain number of magic charges that you can use. These go up with your level, and your, I think it also goes up with your intelligence. So you can only cast a spell so many times. This is your weapon screen. Here's where you can equip all of the weapons that you can carry. I think you can dual wield in this game. That might be the remake. But yeah, this separate weapon equipping screen. You can also trade weapons with other characters as long as they can equip the weapon in question, or for storage, if I remember correctly. You can also drop a weapon. You can never get that back, though. And a separate armor equip screen. A fighter can only equip pieces of armor. White mages and black mages can only equip robes. This is your status screen. You can see strength, agility, intelligence, vitality, and luck. Being that fighter can't use magic, he's one of the dumbest characters. Although this is not necessarily having a high intelligence score means that you're smart in this game or anything. But anyway, damage, hit percentage, absorb, and evade percentage. Hit percentage means that's how many times that you're likely to hit in when you attack. So you hit 10% of the time, you cause possibly 10 damage. You can't absorb any damage, and you might dodge an attack 53% of the time. It's pretty easy math. But only a handful of Final Fantasy games actually bother to teach you that math, or show it to you in such a way. White Mage, in comparison, does not have very good strength or agility, but intelligence is very high, vitality is good, luck's about the same for all characters. White Mage can only damage can only hit 5% of the time, only does 2 damage at best, can't absorb anything, and like the rest, can only evade 53% of the time. Black Mage, on the other hand, has the highest intelligence rating, since he casts the best spells, the attack spells. Not very good vitality, pretty good agility, not very good strength. He only does 1 damage, if that even. He only hits 5% of the time. And his evade percentage is 58, so he actually dodges attacks more often than most characters. Never fear. Black Mage will become a good party member, I promise you. So, without further ado, let's get this game going. Wait a minute. Stopdoor would never play this game. At least not one that looks like this. He'd probably go on to, like, GameStop and get the Game Boy Advance version or something. My God. It's beautiful. Originally released in 2004 for the Game Boy Advance, Final Fantasy 1 and 2 Dawn of Souls is actually a port of a PlayStation remake titled Final Fantasy Origins, which was released in 2003. And without further ado, I welcome you to Final Fantasy 1, a primer. And as you can see, the character limit has been increased to 6 letters now. I will of course be going with my warrior, white mage, black mage setup because it works well for me. You can pick whatever party you want to, Stop Door. Yeah, I think you can see where I'm going with this. Once you're finally done naming your characters, which can turn into a lengthy process, you will notice that there's also an auto-name selection. By pressing select, you can generate a random name for one of your party members. Kolkol, Gills, Gung-Ho, Gills, Gung-Ho, Genkoko, yeah. Yeah, it basically just chooses a random name. Sometimes these names are actual names from other Final Fantasy games. Like, Topapa there, I think. I think he's from another game. And then when you have your fun with that, we can go back and rename him. I think I was trying to name it FF Games, but it didn't work, so let's just go back to FF1. And there we go. There's the party. It's just my party, it doesn't have to be your party. And remember that sequence near the beginning of the original game? It's been pepped up quite a bit. But because I don't want too much of the plot spoiled, we're just going to skip that. And as you can see here in the camp menu, as it's called, you have items, magic, equipment, status, formation, configure, and save. Formation and configure, I believe, are the two new ones, as well as the ability to save on the world map. I don't think that was possible in the original game. In the items menu, you now have unlimited item space. Well, pretty much. There's also a sort button to automatically sort your items, and a separate key items menu. Hooray for upgrades. Magic still the same, except now you have an MP pool rather than magic charges. There's 8 levels. The warrior can't use any magic. You can also press the L or R button to switch between characters. White mage and black mage can clearly use magic. You can also discard magic if you don't like the magic that you bought. Next up is the equipment screen, which is the weapon and armor screen combined into one. That's handy. You can only use, I think, one weapon this time. I don't know. I'm more familiar with the PSP version, but they're all pretty much the same. I think you can carry another weapon in the shield column, but, oh yeah, don't go to optimal, because that will usually screw you up. It will always equip the strongest weapons and armor. You can remove a piece of clothing, obviously. Optimal can really screw up an equipment layout. Like if you're trying to use armor that gives you certain resistances, the optimal selection will screw that up because it'll go to the automatic strongest armor. The status screen, a lot more detailed, pretty much the same stats. Strength, agility, intelligence, stamina, that's vitality. Luck, attack, accuracy, defense, evasion. A few characters actually got a bump up in evasion, which is pretty good actually. Although some characters also got a slight nerf in that column. White Mage. Pretty much the same as in the original game. Just looks nicer. Black Mage actually I think has an increased intelligence stat. I don't remember it being that high in the original, but it could have been. Next up we have Formation, which allows you to, well, select a formation of your party. If, for example, you want the other warrior in the lead spot, you can do that. If you want the Black Mage in the lead spot, you can also do that. You have a backwards party. Although, personally, I wouldn't recommend it because the Black Mage will get hit a lot if you do that. Keep your mages at the bottom and your warriors at the top. The configure screen does what you think it does. It configures the settings of the game. B button dash, adjust B button dash settings. Off, you have to press the B button, I believe. Or dash only while B button is pressed. Or you can turn it on, you can always dash while moving. I would personally leave this off because sometimes you'll run into a wall and stuff. You can set the cursor to default, or you can have it remember where it was at. Helpful in some cases, not always though. Lower numbers for faster display. Message speed's pretty easy. The game does a great job of explaining things. You can adjust the background color if you're not happy with the blue, or you can view the new thing, the bestiary. This shows you all the monsters you defeated. There's a bunch of monsters in the game, 186 to be exact. There's also a save option. If you so choose, you can save your game. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the camp menu. And now back here on the world map. This looks pretty much like any other RPG you've ever played. I'm going to the town of Corneria here, although here it's called Cornelia. In the original game it was Corneria. I want to avoid any spoilers for Stop Door, so we're gonna cut away here real quick. And now we go back into town. You can talk to people if you want, but I didn't. We go in and buy weapons. Nunchaku is something used by black belts, I believe. Rapiers are used by knights. Knives are used by black mages. And I think thieves. Staves are used by mages as well. And the hammer... The hammer seems to be an exclusive weapon solely for white mage. You can also sell items. You go in and equip all this wonderful stuff. The thing about the rapier is that it's a trade-off. You get more attack, but your accuracy decreases a little bit. But that's okay because accuracy is not totally important in this game. A hammer just does more damage outright without any penalty for some reason. I would think wielding a heavy hammer for a white mage would do something, but nope. You go in here and you buy armor. With the light armor, you get the chainmail, but the chainmail is more expensive. We don't need armor at the moment, though. We can safely grind for that. And the dash button at work there. Many times you'll run into NPCs that will block your way. All you have to do is walk into them, and eventually they'll move out of the way. Here's the spell shops for your white and black mages. You'll notice Red Wizard and White Wizard. Those are for later. Basically, you can only get 3 spells per level, so you have to pick carefully. I would recommend Cure, Dia, and Protect. Although I think later on you can safely get rid of Dia and get Blink if you so choose, but... yeah, as you can see, they're already auto-equipped for you, so... you don't have to worry about equipping them. Same goes for Black Mage's spells. In this case, the most useful spells are Fire, Sleep, and Thunder. So, get those. And then we leave the town. And now, time for the battle tutorial. Just walk around in the grass. Or the forest. Whatever you want to call it. And here's the first battle. These used to be called imps, but now they're goblins. Attack is what you think it does. Magic does what you think it does. It casts magic. Items are like potions, although we don't have any at the moment. Some items can be used to produce an effect. Particular weapons have this ability. This is where you can equip certain weapons if you want to use them in battle. And the flee button is, well, that's obvious too. You run from the battle. In the original Final Fantasy, auto attack was something that was not possible. So if you trained all your characters on one target and one of them finished them off, they'd attack thin air. But because this is a port of a remake, auto attack is now fully present, so you can just direct all your characters to attack one target, and they will. They will automatically select the next target. Goblins are the weakest of all the monsters. You can also attack yourself if you want, but that has no benefit in this game. Cure, use Dia, but they're also multi-target spells. This will be for later. Protect will raise one ally's defense, so on and so forth. Fire, Sleep, Thunder. Fire only targets one enemy at a time, but you will get spells later on that target multiple enemies. Goblins are pretty easy to defeat. So, yeah. Pretty standard role-playing game fare. It's not until Final Fantasy 2 and 3 and all the other sequels that the formula starts getting messed with. And when you go into the bestiary, you'll see that Goblin has been added to it. At the bestiary, you can check a monster's stats and what they're weak to, if they have any treasure. Basically, this kind of tells you the best monsters to level grind on, or get which treasure you want from them. Unfortunately, the bestiary doesn't tell you where you can find these enemies, but that's what GameFAQs is for, so... And now stop, Dora. This is all I can safely teach you. I encourage you to discover the rest of the game for yourself. But first, a couple of extra bonus tips. 2 squares northeast of a town called Provoca. Trust me, you'll know it when you find it. It's the only town, I believe, in the first part of the game that has a port. But anyway, 2 squares northeast of that town, there is a programming glitch that has been left in the game, and it's called the Peninsula of Power Leveling. Because of the programming glitch, there are some powerful enemies that spawn here, and you probably shouldn't go anywhere near this square unless you're ready for a real challenge. The main purpose of this little area is to decrease level grinding by hours, if not days. Because the enemies are so strong, you'll start gaining levels left and right, up until a certain point. So, when you have the appropriate equipment, feel free to come to that little peninsula of power leveling and circumvent the game by a lot. Bonus tip 2. Later on in the game, there is an event in the story that will cause you to get somewhat different characters. You'll know what I'm talking about when you finally reach it. As a result, I would heavily recommend you plan your party out ahead of time. For example, if you want a fast attacker, get a thief. If you want a heavy attacker, get a black belt. Bonus tip number 3. This is something I wish someone would have told me before I started playing the game. If you plan to cure everyone, but you also have a reflect spell waiting in the wings, well, bad luck. If the reflect spell comes on before the cure spell will be reflected off of your party onto the monster. You can also sometimes cast reflect on certain enemies, so that when you cast cure on them, they'll be reflected back to you, and on occasion, that also means double the healing. Basically, as in, spells that are reflected usually are twice as powerful when they come back. So yeah, that's a strategy if you want to use it. As promised, I will also explain level grinding. Level grinding is a process in role-playing games where by fighting several enemies in a row for hours on end gets you level ups, stat increases, multiple items which you can then probably sell for money if you want to. As I'm sure there's someone out there watching this that's like, grinding. He said grinding because they're perverted and whatnot. But no, it refers to a process whereby you gain more stat increases and level ups the more time you spend fighting enemies. If you enjoyed this tutorial video as part of the Primer series, which is a new series of tutorial videos that I'm working on for various games, be sure to leave a comment, subscribe, like. You can also find me on Facebook, friend me, follow me on Twitter, and hang out with me on Steam and the Backloggery. Until the next Primer video, this is Sun, signing off.